everyone. If you are tuned in, we are going to be talking a little bit about my decision of why I switched over to a home birth at 29 weeks. And we're also going to talk about birthing trauma and feeling empowered and just really being able to listen to our inner voice. So I'm going to give people a little bit of time to actually check in, and while that happens, I'm going to look for my water. So I might be on the screen for a little bit. I'll be right back. So I'm going to let this go until people have some time to check in. Okay, so have my water and my notes. Oops. Let's go ahead and fix this as we're waiting a couple more minutes before we get started. Thank God for these cool electric gadgets that we have nowadays. Making sure I'm at a good angle there. Wipe off the screen a little bit. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So first, I think I'll start a little bit just with my personal story, just kind of who I am and my background, and maybe how I don't know if you want to say how I have the credentials or whatever to talk about these topics I'm talking about. And so I am a licensed therapist, and I specialize in perinatal maternal mental health, really with a focus on postpartum depression and anxiety mood disorders. I do have a private practice called As We Thrive Counseling Services. I'm currently not seeing clients individually, as I'm actually 29 weeks pregnant with our fourth baby, but I do still participate in running our local Spokane postpartum support group. I do still offer consultations for other professionals in the area who maybe are working with clients who are maybe struggling with anything really in that perinatal stage. So that's like before pregnancy, during pregnancy, and actually also covers post-pregnancy. So I have other providers in the area who contacted me when they are needing help with their clients. I do classes as well, do lots of parenting classes, especially circle security parenting classes. That is what I'm certified to teach and facilitate. So I do run those every once in a while. Those are 8 weeks. I don't have any going right now. I've been getting a lot of calls about those, but I probably won't have one of those coming about until probably after the baby's born. And so when I have just a little bit more time on my schedule and can be a little bit more consistent on doing that. And besides that, I also teach and do classes on essential oils, and I actually do, if other therapists have clients who are interested in essential oils, a lot of times they will refer them to me, and I am actually their wellness advocate and not their therapist. So there's no dual relationship that happens there, and it works actually really nicely. And so today I want to just kind of share a little bit, just some of my personal journey this pregnancy, and then lead into some other topics as well. So in the beginning of my pregnancy, I had something that it's basically called HG, and basically what that is, it's a really severe form of morning sickness. So I was in and out of the hospital, super dehydrated, just was really hard physically and emotionally. It was really hard. With HG, you also you don't only experience some physical things, but you actually also experience a lot of emotional things as well. And I feel like the emotional things were harder for me to grasp than the physical things were for me to really wrap my head around. And so with our third baby, we decided to do a home birth, and it was a huge healing experience for myself. It was a home birth, and it was a VBAC, assisted by midwives. And my second birth was a very traumatic birth experience. And I'm going to talk about birth trauma a little bit later in this during this live feed. But due to my birth trauma with my second, I really wanted a different experience for my third. I really wanted an experience that could make me feel empowered and allow me to kind of regain that sense of control and really part of my dignity that I felt that I lost during my second birth. And I also want to say that this is not a video stating that home births are better than hospital births or whatever birth option you have. This video is really about empowering you to feel courageous and making the decisions that you need to make when it comes to your birthing options. I think that we all need something different, and so I'm thankful that we live in a place where we can have options. I know some other states actually don't have options to birth at home. Their only option is to maybe birth in a hospital. So I'm thankful that I live somewhere that I can choose to birth in a hospital, I can choose to birth at home, and I can choose, to birth in a birthing center. I'm really thankful for that. And I think the more options that we can have for families, the better, because we're definitely not all cookie cutter families, right? We're all different. We all have different needs, and we're all called to have different experiences. So I will make sure that I'm really clear that this is not a video about contradicting different birth options. This is not what we're going with that. So my home birth experience for my third, like I said, was really just a healing experience for me. I loved it. It was great. So, here comes the fourth, and I actually, in the beginning, decided to do a home birth, but then I felt like I was experiencing some complications, and I actually did need some medical interventions during this time, and that was not easy for me, being in and out of the hospital, and just my whole life basically stopped, and I call it like my black period, where I was just felt like I lived in a black hole for 4 months and just did nothing at all, because I literally could do nothing at all. And that was really, really hard for me. And so as I'm starting to really come out of that and really starting to feel like myself, as much as you can when you're in your third trimester at this point, but just really starting to feel like me again, and just really again, I was having this feeling of, I really don't want to birth where I had birthed prior with my second. I just was really starting to feel like I wanted to have the home birth experience again, and it was a feeling that kept coming up over and over and over and over and over again. And I also too started to notice that just certain things and certain topics would actually trigger quite a bit of anxiety. And I did have a super awesome OB. He was amazing and really took the time to listen to me and to listen to my story. And that in itself was really just an awesome healing experience. But I knew I had to make a choice where I felt empowered as a person, where I felt empowered as a mother as well. And so I remember contacting my girlfriends and just saying, please pray for me, you guys, because I'm just not quite sure, what I want to do. Well, I do believe prayer works, and seeking counsel also works, and really trusting your inner voice also works as well. And so we had to went ahead and decided to go ahead and transfer, and we're going to have a home birth again for the second time. And it felt really cool. I mean, I felt really courageous. I felt like I just like climbed a mountain. It was a huge decision for us, but one I'm really excited about. But what it really shined light on is just the experience of birth trauma. And I don't think it's something that really gets talked about a lot in our society. There's actually not a ton of research on birth trauma, and some people don't even acknowledge birth trauma as something that mothers actually really go through and experience. So I do now want to take the time to kind of tap into this, and this is something that I've personally experienced. So I'm talking from a personal perspective, and also as a professional as well in this field. And so I do have my notes down here, so that's what I'm glancing on. I want to make sure that I stay on track. I can really easily go into little bunny trails just because I get really excited about these topics. So, but just really short, just to kind of explain what exactly birth trauma is. So birth trauma is basically, it's PTSD, right? So that occurs after birth. And what PTSD stands for is post-traumatic stress disorder. And we typically hear this with our men and women in service, right? With veterans. That's usually what we associate PTSD with. But many moms also experience this after birth. And actually, so do partners who have witnessed a traumatic birth. They also can have the symptoms of PTSD as well. Now, not every mom, not every partner is going to experience PTSD during a traumatic event, right? During a traumatic birth. But they could have a lot of the symptoms that maybe moms who would be, let's say diagnosed, or they go to see a therapist, and the therapist would say, all right, yes, you definitely have birth trauma. And so you could have the symptoms, but not maybe severe enough to actually have to kind of carry that diagnosis with you. So that's really important too. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, this happened. This must mean I have, birth trauma, but that's really not the case. And it does take sitting with a professional to really be able to decipher if that's what's going on or not. And then we also have, which was really common, right? We say postpartum depression, but it's really anxiety and anxiety and mood disorder. And actually, most I would say women who struggle with postpartum mood and anxiety disorder actually struggle more with the anxiety part than actually the depression part. And so PTSD, right, birth trauma, and postpartum anxiety depression, right, that they actually can overlap. And sometimes what happens, though, is that really a mom could be going through birth trauma and then be accidentally diagnosed as having postpartum depression. And so it's really important that you work with a professional who actually can help you decipher between the two. But sometimes moms do experience both of them. But if you're experiencing birth trauma and you get maybe diagnosed, or maybe you get prescribed an antidepressant medication and you're not seeing any results, the reason for that is because you're probably more under the category of birth trauma, and only someone who specializes in this field would actually probably be able to decipher between one or the other. And so that's usually where my consultation actually comes in, when I'm working with other professionals in this field. And so I really love this quote that I found. I thought it was awesome. But it says, birth trauma is in the eye of the beholder. And I think this is so important and so key. I cannot tell you how many moms have come to me, who I've seen, who have been in group, who actually have experienced birth trauma, but are told by so many other people around them that, oh no, you're fine. You know, everyone has a hard time during birth. Oh my gosh, do you want to hear my story? Oh my gosh, well, you know, thank God you have a healthy baby. You know, wasn't it all worth it? And it's just this kind of this idea of like, basically, get over yourself because what you're facing is silly and it's not real and it's, you know what I mean? And everybody, first of all, experiences things differently. The way I experienced my birth trauma is going to be very different than the way that you experience your birth trauma, and I am no one to say that you did not experience that. In no way, no how is that okay, and hopefully us as mothers and as providers, as fathers, as partners, hopefully we would never say those words or do those things because that can be so damaging to a mom and her health and her growth. So just be super cautious of that, of your words and what you're saying, because in that mom's eyes, in her reality, in her experience, she experienced birth trauma and she needs to be heard and cared for and not to be told that what she experienced was not real. So super key. That can send a mom into some pretty severe symptoms. So be super cautious of that. And if you're out there and you've heard those words, just know that what you are experiencing is very real and it's all going to be okay. And there are others out there who do understand what you're going through. Okay, so it's also important to know, right? Things, you know, some people say, well, like, oh my gosh, am I like predisposed to birth trauma? Like, now I'm getting nervous that I might experience birth trauma, or you know, there's a lot of these. Sometimes we could kind of get overwhelmed with all of these like what ifs kind of deals. So I'm just going to read off just a couple of triggers for birth trauma. Okay, and I have a list here because there's no way I'm going to remember all of these. So the length of labor and very painful labor, induction, poor pain relief, and poor pain relief, right, can come from maybe the medication you're choosing to use or the intervention, but it also can come from all the different techniques that you've been trying to relieve your pain. So this is not just poor pain relief from medicine. It's also going to be poor pain relief maybe from not having the support you need to help you to get into more comfortable positions that you could possibly be in. Feelings of loss of control, high levels of medical intervention, traumatic or emergency deliveries, right, because those are very fast usually, impersonal treatment or problems with the staff, so they're like the staff's attitudes, that can be a humongous experience, and it could be, you could maybe have a birth team and their attitudes or their presence is not consoling to you, it's not comforting to you, not being listened to, that's huge, lack of information or explanation of what's going on, kind of being in that unknown area can really stir up fear, fear for baby safety, stillbirth, baby stay in NICU, and the stillbirth in the NICU category, that's definitely can contribute to birth trauma, but that's a whole nother, I feel, Facebook Live video that we could probably tap into, because those are a lot more in depth, those experiences are. Poor postnatal care and previous trauma. So not only previous birth trauma, but previous trauma of any kind, you know, sexual abuse, being in a DV relationship, being, you know, emotional abuse, any of those kind of circumstances, they actually could trigger some birth trauma as well. So that's really important to know. I would say the greatest concern that I hear from moms is actually just the day-to-day difficulties, you know, the real struggle of moms sometimes struggle with bonding with their baby because when they look at their baby, it actually reminds them of their experience. And this actually can cause maybe some attachment issues in the beginning. And I don't mean to say that that causes attachment issues like, oh, because I wasn't attached to my baby in the beginning, our relationship is going to be impaired or anything like that. But because that's not the case. Usually what happens is like, there's something in your head that's like, oh my gosh, I want to attach to the baby so bad. I want to bond with the baby so bad. But it almost feels like there's like a wall between you and baby, and it's hard to kind of get through that. And that's really frustrating. That's really discouraging. And I know from my own personal experience, I mean, every time I saw my baby, I was just like, I just had such a hard time connecting and bonding with her, even though I really, like, everything in me really, really, really wanted to. And I would just, like, stare at her for a really long time, just thinking, like, it's going to come, it's going to come. And it just, like, just took forever to come. And I was definitely going, I mean, there was so much going through my head and of just, like, the experience running through my head over and over and over and over again. So if you have this traumatic experience running through your head over and over and over again, of course that's going to have an effect on the body. Of course it's going to have an effect on your emotions and on your brain. And then while you're going through all that, you're also trying to, like, facilitate this bonding with your baby, which is really, really hard to do. But when you're in it, it's hard to be like, oh, this is normal, right? Because you feel like you're not normal. You feel like you're completely out of place. So it's really the daily things that occur that I would say really affect moms and partners the most. It's really hard. So another thing too, but just to let you know some other things that you can also experience, with PTSD, with birth trauma, a lot of agitation, irritability, hostility, hypervigilance, self-destructive behavior, social isolation. I would say I see a lot of the social isolation come into play a lot. You tend to want to just kind of be by yourself and just kind of stay in your house, which of course doesn't make the situation any better, but that's kind of like your internal way of also too trying to like protect yourself in a way. And I do hear a lot about the agitation and just being super, super irritable, just like no patience, no nothing, and especially you have other little kids around, and it's hard, right? Because when you have like a 2-year-old or 3-year-old or 4-year-old like running around the house and they're needing your patience, and your patience like bank is totally wiped out. So when it comes to mood, so a loss of interest and pleasure, lots of guilt, loneliness, a lack of intimacy. That one for couples is one that I actually see a lot in when I do counseling. The lack of intimacy in the relationship. And I would just say intimacy not only meaning sexual, but also intimacy, just the closeness, being together, connecting, being able to have those deep conversations that you used to have together. There's just a lack of all of that. And birth trauma can put a really big strain on the relationship. And a lot of the research I've been reading, I just read something about Sue Johnson, who actually said that the research that she's looking at is stating that if a couple actually goes to therapy together, they actually have higher success rates than when a mom or a dad or a partner goes to therapy on their own, because this affects the relationship so much. And it's going to be really important that not only is the mother being educated and being informed of what's going on, it's actually super important that that partner also is super aware of what's going on. That way he can support her as well, and he has a better understanding of more awareness of what's going on. Like, okay, she seems a little irritated right now. This makes sense because this is part of where she's at right now, and this is part of what she's going through. So I always recommend doing couples therapy if possible, instead of doing individual therapy. I also highly recommend group as well. Like support groups are huge. I'm not anti-individual counseling, but I prefer, like if I were to grade the levels, I would say couples therapy, group therapy, and then individual therapy actually would be the very last one. I just think the whole idea of being a village and being with others is a huge part of a healing process. You also, too, you might experience some insomnia and nightmares. It's super common, not being able to fall asleep. And so there are certain techniques for that, and that's, again, probably a whole nother Facebook live feed that I can do if anyone is interested in that one as well. But I really like mindfulness. If you don't know much about that, you can actually Google it. It's a pretty hot, trendy, new thing. It's not actually new, but you know how things are. They trend, they come, they go, they come back. So, but mindfulness is really awesome. So I highly recommend that you look into that if you are struggling with insomnia. There's also easy things that you can do, like writing on a note card that you put next to your bed. You know, I am resting. My bones are resting. I'm laying here. I'm in bed. My body is resting. You know, because a lot of times we're in bed and we're like, I gotta go to sleep, I gotta go to sleep, I gotta go to sleep, I gotta go to sleep. But actually, what does that do? That actually increases your anxiety because you're laying in bed, you're not falling asleep, and you're thinking about all the things you have to do tomorrow and how tired you're actually going to be. So really, we try to have moms not have that be their focus, but have your focus be what you're actually doing. I mean, you actually are laying in bed. Your muscles and your bones and all that are actually in a rested state, right? So just really trying to focus more on that than what is not happening or what you're wishing is to happen. So anyways, a little bit on that. I could go way more into that. We'll do that another time. Some other things too is just really like emotional detachment. So you kind of see the social isolation as well, but you just see just like the affect has really changed. You know, sometimes I hear partners say, she just doesn't smile anymore, she doesn't seem happy anymore, or she just seems down all the time, or, you know, and those are all really common things. I think sometimes during these periods we tend to go inward a lot, and so we are doing a lot, but other people don't see it because it's within ourselves. And as healing starts to happen, like that slowly starts to come out. But in the beginning, it's really hard, and you do see that emotional attachment. And it's really important for people who are surrounding this mom that they do not take the emotional attachment as don't take it personally, because it has nothing to do with you at all. It really has to do with the space that the mom is in. And this is really hard for family and friends to understand, because you know, like, well, I'm just here to help, and she won't talk to me, she won't engage with me, she won't let me come over, and I just don't understand, and they get really discouraged, and that is a normal feeling to have, right? When your heart is in it, and you love this person so much, and you want to help so much, and they're not being responsive to you, that is hard. So I do want to acknowledge that, but at the same time, they are really going through a hard time, and the emotional detachment is part of their experience that they're having. So during this time, just giving lots and lots of grace, you know, sending text messages without really requiring a response, leaving a meal maybe on the porch with a card, where you're not, like, you know, saying that they need to call you back or anything like that. So there's actually a lot of ways that you can help, but you need to be helping without the expectation of, you know, oh, she's going to call me and we're going to have this long hour conversation, and so I know how she's doing and all of that, right? So, but still being encouraging on your end, and just really believing in the process and knowing that she eventually is going to come out of this. And the beautiful thing is with friendships and families that are strong is that we can have these times in our relationships and know that we are going to be in another season, another time, and it's going to be so awesome for this mom to have people like yourself around her. I can't tell you how many moms who are just so grateful for those who stood by them during this time when they really couldn't engage in the way that they really wanted to engage. A lot of moms also experience unwanted thoughts, and so a lot of times this might be hard to hear, so just prepare your heart now. But I mean, a lot of times moms have thoughts of suicide or harming their baby or running away or leaving their kids, or And these thoughts are really, really hard, and they're actually super scary. But a great thing to point out is that these are unwanted thoughts, right? They're intrusive. They're intruding. You don't want them to be there. And those are the key things that we look at as professionals, is that these are unwanted. And these unwanted thoughts are very normal, but yes, they can be scary. And the best thing to really do is be able to actually open up about them and share about them. The more you keep them in and the more you keep them as a secret, the scarier actually they can be. Like I say with anything else, if you keep something in the dark, the worse it gets. Once we shine light on it, right, that's when the healing process starts to happen. So if you're having those, don't be afraid to share them with someone who can understand, and really just be there for you. And of course, we have great resources like in Spokane. We have First Call for Help. There's lots of hotlines where you can call. Where you can call and talk to someone over the phone if you really are feeling unsafe. Because we definitely want to intervene if intervention is needed. Okay, so I kind of also too want to just tap into this whole idea of being empowered. And I did share about a little bit of just a tiny bit about my birthing experience and kind of how I got to the decision I got to, and just how important it is for us to choose things that allow us to feel empowered as individuals. How important it is for us to listen to our inner voice as well. How powerful it is for us to be in an environment where we do feel like we have some control, where we do feel like we have a voice, and we do feel like that we are seen as people and as mothers and as wives and as partners. Those things are really important. And with all of that, it's important to be able to trust yourself. You know, we all have like that gut feeling, or that whatever, that mama gut, or whatever, that mama intuition that we have. I think it's important that we listen to those things. A lot of times we can doubt ourselves, or overthink things, or overprocess things, and sometimes it's just really being still and being reflective, and knowing that whatever you choose to do, you're going to have others with you on that journey, and you're not traveling alone. Some, do this through prayer. Some people take the time to pray and to meditate. Some seek counsel, like some go to therapy or pastoral, counsel, or sometimes it's just a coach, a life coach. Some do this by doing research. Some feel like they need to, read every article that they can, or every book that they can get their hands to. And that's fine, because I think self-awareness and awareness in general is actually really important. So being comfortable with the decisions you make is a good thing to do. There's also healthy risk-taking as well. And this is something I talk about often. We talk about risk-taking, but I think there's like risk-taking, and then I think there's healthy risk-taking, right? So healthy risk-taking is when you're using all these above things I have mentioned, and you're taking a risk, right? You're coming out of your comfort zone, and just really reaching out into a new area. That's what we call healthy risk-taking. And sometimes making these kinds of decisions and going through these kinds of experiences, you actually do need to actually allow yourself to experience some healthy risk-taking. I think another huge thing too is being able to reach out. So really being able to tap into your village. And I use the village mentality a lot. And it is super key. It's so important that you have a village established, or that you're working to create a village. And if you need help doing that, you could definitely message me or comment me, and we can figure out different ways that we can get you connected into your community, with other people, churches, community groups, workout groups. There's all kinds of groups nowadays. But sometimes these groups are awesome, and you look at them, you're like, oh my gosh, I would love to go and participate, but something kind of keeps us back from actually engaging in those groups. So really important to tap into your village or be creating a village. Really important to be reaching out. Facebook is really awesome for groups. There's lots of awesome mom groups. There's one that I am a part of and really like is the Spokane River Midwives. That's a group that I'm a part of, and there's lots of moms, supportive moms in that group. It's a really confidential group, so it's a place where you can share and you can dialogue, and there's no shame, there's no judgment in that group. There seems to be all different kinds of moms with all different kinds of life experiences, and it's just a really beautiful example of what a community can look like. There are some groups that are full of moms and wives and all these great things, but I also see a lot of shaming happening as well. And so you just kind of, you don't want to be a part of those groups. If you're feeling like you can't share, when you do share, you're feeling attacked, then that's probably a really good sign that that group might not be a good group. Sometimes, hurting people hurt other people. And so sometimes I see that a lot as well. There's also the option to see a therapist or a counselor as well. Just a caution again, if you're seeing a therapist or a counselor for birth trauma or for postpartum mood and anxiety disorders, or if you're seeing a counselor during your pregnancy or infertility or any of those kind of topics, it's going to be super important that you actually meet with a professional who has some kind of training in this area. I did my training through Postpartum Support International, and it was super awesome. It was 8 weeks long. Actually, no, it was 12. Yeah, it was 12 weeks long, and I've done trainings even after that as well. And so you want to ask them how comfortable they are with these topics as well. Sometimes we have counselors who maybe do PTSD or maybe do depression or, oh yeah, I've done that before, but it's actually really different when we're talking about perinatal maternal mental health. So you need to be asking your therapist, what is their experience in this, what's their training, and if they feel comfortable. And they need to be honest with you, because you have every right to have a therapist who knows how to work in this area, and it would not, the therapist would not be doing their good due diligence by taking you on without having any training or any experience in this area. Really important too of being aware, being informed of what's happening. And so having that psychoeducational piece is going to be super huge. It could be scary, like I said before, to kind of be in that unknown place and not know what's happening or what's going on. So usually in my first couple of sessions with moms and partners, I actually just really kind of do some psych education. And I just explain about what birth trauma is, what's happening with the brain, what's happening with your emotions, and what's happening physically. And that alone is it's really comforting for parents, because, you just feel like lost, and you feel out of control, and you feel like you're broken. You feel like something is wrong with me. Like, why do I feel this way? And so to be able to get answers to those questions is just a huge relief. And to know that so many other partners have actually experienced this and have experienced healing, it's just really encouraging. So being informed, being aware is super key. Watching live videos like this one, going to support groups, right? Because then you get to hear the experience of other moms too, and other partners as well. And it really normalizes your experience. It really makes you feel like, oh, I'm not the only one. And actually, there's a lot of people who experience this but never talk about it, because they feel so guilty and they feel so ashamed for feeling like this, so they never say anything. And it's really sad, because I think the more we talk about this, the more healing we're going to experience among each other. So I dare you to be courageous for yourself and for other moms too who are out there as well. Let me see, I want to make sure I got into everything. Oops, I have my notes kind of going everywhere. I just wrote on here too that it's just so important to know that this is not your forever. You're not forever going to be in this season. This is a season that you're in now. And I use the bubble analogy a lot. So it's like in the season, you're in this bubble, right? And you're just totally encompassed by everything that's going on, right? But as you start to heal, you actually start to come out of that bubble. And it does take some time. Everyone's journey is different. Everyone's healing experience is different. There is no time limit, time zone, or time frame where you're supposed to feel better. That's a myth, and that's super discouraging for a lot of people. So there isn't. Your own healing experience is going to be very personal to you. But just know that this is a season and that this is not forever and that things are going to get better. There are a lot of moms who experience birth trauma and they have a desire to have kids, but they're so scared to have kids again because they're scared that they will experience this again. There are just tons of fears around this whole topic. So the more you talk about it, the better. Prevention is great. If you experience birth trauma and you're thinking about having another baby, it's a great time to plug in with a therapist or a counselor or to go to a support group to really start dialoguing about those pieces. Totally recommend couples counseling at this stage because not only were you affected, but your partner was also affected as well, and they might have some hesitation too of wanting another kid as well. But those are definitely pieces that can be worked out and talked about. So don't let fear be the reason you make a decision. Let your healing experience and the peace be part of your decision making, if that makes sense. And just to share just a couple of resources that you actually can find online or on Facebook. So Postpartum Support International is a great online support. They offer trainings as well. So if you're watching this as a professional, if you're watching this as a doula or as a midwife, you can take this training as well. They offer all kinds of different trainings. It's really, really cool. One of the ones that I would really like to take, they have a training that's really designed for those who really want to start like their whole organization and have like a call center and all that. And that's definitely one of my dreams. Maybe my kids get a little bit older and I'm in a different season. That's something I would really like to see for Spokane, to have a hotline and like kind of cool stuff. Postpartum Progress. That one is a blog and a Facebook page that you can follow. A lot of times I share their information, so you might have seen them on my newsfeed as well. Look for local support groups. So like I said, I do the postpartum support group here in Spokane. That is free, and we meet every third Wednesday of the month. Meets at 7 o'clock, so 7 to 8:30. Sometimes we stay a little bit later, depending on the need of the group. But it's a really safe, confidential place where you can come. Maybe hopefully in the future we'll offer that group more often, so just once a month. Maybe we'll offer it twice a month. But again, that's probably post me having baby and being able to have the capability to do that. Bloom Spokane, if you're local, is actually a really great place too that you can actually look for other resources in our community. I want to make sure I say her website right. I love this therapist. She's super amazing. But pretty sure it's Care Alliance, and she's local in Spokane, and she is actively seeing individual clients. I think she just brought another therapist on board as well. So you can look her up on Facebook. She also has a website. Actually does a lot on birth trauma. I think that's a specialty that she's actually picked up and really dove a lot into. So you definitely can contact her. And if I said anything wrong, Birth Alliance or Care Alliance, please call me or let me know. But I wanted to give you a shout out because I think what you do in our community is super amazing. And she's actually also a doula as well. So she's really cool. And so, oh, I should just say too that the postpartum support group, we actually meet at Mount Spokane Pediatrics over on the north side. So I can post this information too if you have questions or comments or anything like that. So that is all that I have for tonight. Hopefully I didn't overtalk you. Hopefully that this information is helpful. You know, share this in your mom groups, in your birthing groups, in your doula groups. You know, share this wherever it would be helpful. I think I would love that. Even though I'm not seeing clients individually, I still love this topic, and this has been a really great way for me to still be connected to the community and offer what I can offer to hopefully offer encouragement and support and hope. So thank you so much for joining me.